Hello and welcome to another ship review. Today we will talk about Thrasher. Thrasher is one of my favorite Tick 1 destroyers. It has very nice set of bonuses that make it cost efficient, and it performs quite well. As you can see on the right, the win rates for Thrasher is 28%, and it is the second strongest Tick 1 destroyer according to win rates, only second to Dragoon, and Dragoon is kind of a separate story because Dragoon counteracts the most of the current meta. I would say in the current meta, Thrasher lost a bit of its appeal. The Thrasher is extremely strong against frigates. We will talk about why a bit later, and nowadays you have to fight against Navy destroyers more often than against frigates, and against Navy destroyers, of course, Thrasher doesn't perform as well as against frigates. So the ship has 8-3-2 slot layout and three very nicely synergizing bonuses. So you get a bonus to damage, a bonus to application, tracking speed, and a bonus to projection. And these three bonuses together unlock many artillery feats, and in general they make Thrasher a very good frigate killer with artillery feats specifically. Because for frigates it becomes quite difficult to escape or mitigate all of his damage, because you get application bonus, so you can't easily break tracking, and you get optimal range bonus, so you can't easily mitigate this damage by kiting at range. And as a result, the majority of feats are artillery feats, so about 60% of all the feats in faction warfare, and another 40% are autocannons. And you have two primary archetypes. If you fit autocannons, then the Thrasher will be brawling archetype, and if you fit artillery, then you will get usually web kiting archetype with overprop afterburner. You can also make kiting fit work, but I think it wasn't as good before the introduction of Navy destroyers, and nowadays you just directly compete with Navy Thrasher, which is designed more towards kiting role with artillery and not web kiting role. In terms of engagement profile, you can't really fight Navy destroyers, and you can't really fight assault frigates in a Thrasher. The tank to DPS is just not sufficient. But you can fight all Tick 1 frigates and all Tick 1 destroyers, which is obvious, and it also covers most of the Navy frigates. So even against ships with heavy control, for example, like Navy Vigil or Navy Hookbill with Tracking Disruptor, you will still apply good enough damage to be competitive. Of course, you cannot really fight in engagements that kinda counter you. So if you fit artillery, you probably cannot fight Blaster Comet if you're out of position, or if you fit autocannons, you probably cannot fight like a Navy Vigil or Navy Hookbill when you're out of position. But overall, the engagement profile against Navy frigates is pretty good. I think it's quite a bit higher actually if you know what to do when 26-27% that you see on this graph. In my experience, it's probably closer to like 40 to 50%. Okay, let's look at the feats next. We will start with autocannon feat that has been popular for like 15 years or maybe more. So you feed autocannons in high slots when you shield tank and go with max damage essentially. The idea is that you try to close the distance or you start in position, and when you just try to overwhelm your opponent with damage before your opponent establishes control and starts to mitigate your DPS. The biggest problem with his feat is the lack of control and that it's really not survivable. So if you find yourself in a position where you are taking damage but you cannot apply damage even for something like 10 to 20 seconds, it will very likely mean that you are just going to lose, because your hit points are practically non-existent. So for solo PvP this is viable, but it's not that great, I feel like. The next feat is the 10-man artillery webkiter. I think this one is probably the best currently, because it kind of hits a nice balance between good control, good application and pretty reasonable damage. The idea is to stay at around 10 to 13 kilometers and try to kite. And one good thing about 10-man AB is that people will have to chase you with minimal transversal, and they essentially will take full damage all the time from the artillery, which is quite difficult to achieve usually. So they will be webbed, transversal will be minimal, and you also have a big tracking bonus on the ship. If, as usual with fights against an man, if a frigate sees that they cannot win the fight, it takes a lot of time to disengage, because they will have to burn away from the web and then burn 28 kilometers away from a warp disruptor. And while they do that, they will still eat full DPS from your artillery. So this feat is, I think, very good in current meta, and it's very affordable. You are just barely above 10 million ISK. You can fit the same idea with Tech 2 guns, but you will need to downgrade your web, your damage control, and then drop one of the rigs for a power grid rig. In my experience, it's not a worthy trade. You will get just slightly more volley, but your tank will be worse and your web will be worse a bit as well, and if it will be expensive if you care about it. The next thing that worked for many years, and it's a pretty amazing invention, is the artillery Thrasher with full application and full damage but no tackle. So the idea for this feat is that you just chill around the warping beacon. Ideally you want to be in position, and when someone comes, you apply double webs and you hit them with insane volley. It's quite tricky to win the DPS race against this Thrasher, because mitigation in scrum range just doesn't work, because you have double webs and a tracking bonus. And mitigation with range also doesn't work that well, because you have 280 millimeter, so you can just load uranium and you will hit just fine. Nowadays this feat is a bit worse than before, again because The meta kind of shifted towards navy destroyers and assault frigates to some extent, and of course against these ships with lots of hit points, this idea doesn't really work. This idea works well against all frigates, so Tick 1 frigates, navy frigates, pirate frigates, Tick 1 destroyers to a lesser extent, but against navy destroyers and like assault frigates this doesn't really work. And the final feat, I think this one was always a bit weaker, but if you want to make kiting Thrasher work, I think the current take on this kiting Thrasher feat would be something like this. Previously, like 10 years ago, kiting Thrashers usually used medium shield extenders, and they were essentially just shield kiters, maybe with nano. I think nowadays you really need a tracking disruptor if you want to do something against navy destroyers, specifically navy destroyers with long range guns. You kinda need to counter them, otherwise you're just not gonna win the DPS race because your DPS is just really poor. So I think this is something that you may try. Tracking disruptor against navy destroyers, maybe a web against frigates. And when you just try to kite with depleted uranium, and if you are caught, but you have a web, you just switch into the appropriate faction ammo. And it's fine to have metaphor guns because you are never going to need Tech 2 armor in artillery anyways, and metaphor guns help you to make everything work in terms of fitting. Okay, I think these are the main Thrasher feats. In particular, if you are interested in flying this ship, I would recommend this one, 10 web kiter. As I said, it's still very cost efficient choice, very cost efficient Tick 1 destroyer, maybe not as strong as it used to be before navy destroyers were added to the game, but it's still very usable. Okay, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next ship review.